Hey guys, just a quick little sort of intro to Maya tutorial. So this is for pretty much complete beginners, so people that know just the very basics of how to sort of navigate and use Maya. You know, I'm not going through how to orbit and pan and things like that, but we're making this little robot character based on the concept art from the game Mechanicum, or Machinima. I'm not sure how you pronounce this game. Machinarium sounds good. Machinarium. I think it's actually Machinarium. Anyway, this is the concept, and you can see it's pretty rough and loosely. It's not identical, but this tutorial is very much for beginners. So you can use the default Maya tools. I'm using Maya 2019.3, and we're rendering in Arnold, but just going through all the basics of how to make this dude. Okay, so to make this project, to make this little robot, first thing I want to do is make a Maya project. So I'm just going to File, Project Window, and go New, give it a name. I'm going to call it, I think it's pronounced Machinarium or Machinarium, made up word really, it's probably from Latin or something. And we'll go into the location where I want to save it. So let's see, I'll just put it into projects folder. Now in here, I want it inside this folder called bots. And in this folder, I want to create a new folder called Machinarium. So whatever I name this, it will actually automatically create the folder. So I don't want to say, you know, make a new folder in here, because then I'm going to have, like if I called a folder in here called Machinarium, or I'm not sure how to pronounce that, if I called it Machinarium and then hit go ahead, and then when I open this up in Windows, I'm going to have a folder inside this bots folder called Machinarium, and inside that is another folder called Machinarium, and inside that will be all these projects. So when you make a project, you just want to pick the main sort of root folder that it's going to live in, and inside there, which in this case is bots, it'll make its own folder, and inside that folder it's going to put all these other folders. So these are all the default folders that Maya makes when you make a project. So all I need to say is I want to make it in here, like I've got one called Dixon bot, and in here I'll just call it bots and select, and it's going to make this folder. So I go accept. And what I'll do is right from the start is just save my scene, and you can see straight away it's in this folder. So it's created this Machinarium inside bots, and it's taken me to the scenes, which is your standard location for Maya projects. And let's just call it whatever. I always like to go 01 as at the end of my file name, and just go file save as 0203, manually incrementally save. So I'll save that. And now I want to, I've got this reference picture. I'm not going to try to perfectly match it up. I'm actually going to eyeball it. What I could do is put this in the front view and model perfectly, or as close as I can manage in the front view, the same layout of the model, you know, so a cylinder that's at that sort of angle, and whatever shape this is, kind of a cylinder with a sphere at the top at that rotated angle. It would be better if I just eyeball it. It's good practice, but also, you know, this is just a quick exercise for beginners, and it's going to be easier if we keep it all flat and then just rotate it at the end. So what I'm going to do, I do want to bring this in as a reference image just to show you how to do that, but I'm not actually going to line it up. So what I'll do is just copy this folder that I've created, this file. Firstly, I just want to, what I'm doing is pasting that so inside in Windows, in my projects, characters, bots, I've got this new folder that Maya created for me. And when I made a project, it created that for me, and it created all of these subfolders, and it's created this workspace. And inside the images, I could also use source images. I'll just stick it in images. I'm copying, well, I've already copied, and now I'm pasting this concept art. So now that I've done that, what I can do is I'll do it in the front view. So I just hold down space and left click and go down to front view. I'm going to go view, image plane, import image, and that's in, I put it in my images and there it is. It gives me a little preview. And so there's our robot. So just space, hold down space, left mouse, perspective. And what I'm going to do with this is actually, I'll bring it back. I'm going to bring it to the side. So if I do go to the front, I'm going to model it over here and look at this. So I don't actually want to, model over the top of this. In this case, in a lot of modeling, you will do that. You will line it up. But this isn't, this is a 3/4 view. It's at a weird angle, and it would be approximated anyway. So let's just eyeball it. So I'll keep this simple. I'm not going to go too crazy with detailing. It's kind of hard to avoid that sometimes, but let's see how we go. So I'm going to start in the polygon menu. So I'm not in, don't want the blue ones, which is the surfaces. We want polygons, and I'm going to make a cylinder. So this third one along. You can see that's made a 3D cylinder. Now by default that has, if I come into my channel box, so what I'm using actually for this setup is Maya Classic Workspace. You can change these workspaces and it's just a default layout. Any changes I make to these workspaces it remembers. So I've set up Maya Classic to just have each one of these buttons which are these tabs, and you can see when I click on them it's opening up those tabs. I've got a couple of things that you don't need to worry about, but the channel box especially, this one, the attribute editor and the modeling toolkit are the 3 ones that you'll be using all the time. So in the channel box it's got this under this inputs one. Now I need to do this, if I'm going to change this I need to do it before I do any changes to the object. So as soon as I've made an object I can click on inputs, and what I wanted to do is just look at this. So by default that's set to 32, but it depends on the computer you're on or what changes have been made recently, but it could come in, you bring in your cylinder and it's a bit low poly like that, so it's only got 16 subdivisions. It's just a matter of selecting it in the channel box under inputs, changing its subdivision levels there. I think 20, from memory, I think 20 is the default, but I'm not sure. We don't care too much as long as it looks nice. What I do care about, I want a cap at the top. So I'm going to just go for caps, just go 2. And so what that's done is it's added this edge loop around here. Alright, so let's, what I'll do is jump to the front view. I'm just trying to eyeball this. I can always just drag this over and I might, instead of scaling this down, I might actually make this a bit larger because it's pretty small. So when I scale, move, scale, rotate, what I'm doing is I'm just hitting Q for the select tool, W for the move, E for rotate, and R for scale. So it's just in that order based on these 3. So 1, 2, 3, and W, E, R, 1, 2, 3. It's just a nice easy way to quickly move about. You definitely want to get in the habit of doing those keys. You're constantly changing between scale and rotate and move, not translate. Having to move your cursor over here and click and come back is slow. It'll slow you right down. So I'm going to scale this up. I'm just eyeballing this. I just want to get an approximate shape for that. And I'm going to do the same for the top. So that's also a cylinder. And I'm going to use, I want the same sort of settings as this cylinder. So I want the 20 divisions and I want the top and bottom cap. So what I'm actually just going to do is duplicate this. So Control D will duplicate. So, and then just drag it up. So I've got 2 of them. I'll come back to my front view, and again, just eyeballing it, but just trying to get, all I'm worried really about is the size of that head. So I'm just trying to get the base of that jaw, I'll come back to scale, to be roughly that sort of thickness. And I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to rotate it to line it up for now, because it'll be easier this way. So let's just do this, position it. And what kind of works, this is just like a flappy jaw, so it's kind of useful if you just make this one that's flat, maybe about that thickness. It's probably a touch thinner actually, and then Control D and make another one. And for now I'm going to, if I rotate it like this, you can see it's rotating at the center point. I really want it to rotate at the back. So what I'll do is, in my modeling toolkit, I press Edit Pivot. I can just press D is the shortcut you'd normally use. I'm going to snap to vert. I'm just going to snap this pivot point to this position. So basically, at the moment, because I clicked on this magnet, snap to vert, it's snapping at these vertices points. So I want it right here at the back. Actually, I probably want it down here at this one. So I'll turn off my snap to pivot, or snap to point. I'll turn off my edit pivot, and what that lets me do now is when it rotates, it's flappy jaw, like, you know, it's a little talking thing. So I'm probably not actually going to rotate it just yet, but it's useful that I can open that up if I need to. I'm going to leave it flat for now actually, so it's just a little bit easier to model. Alright, so let's do this top section. What you want to do when you're modeling is look at the object and kind of figure out, you know, analyze it, figure out what shapes it's made of. And this is very much a sphere. So what would probably be a good way to go is, you know, I could extrude this. So what I mean is I could go into face mode, grab all of the top faces, deselect those side ones. So I've only got these top, you can see there, only the top ones are selected. And what I could do is basically extrude up and just keep on extruding and scaling in. So this would work, and just manually kind of scale it into this shape. It's not a bad way to go. You know, that probably is the best way to go actually. Like, that works really quite easily. It was clean and it was quick. But what's also useful is knowing that you can connect two objects. So I'm going to show you another way to do it, just so you can see there's multiple ways, and it's good sort of educational value for understanding you can connect multiple objects. So what I'm going to do is, I don't want these inside faces. So because I currently have these faces selected, I'm going to hit delete, intentionally deleting those faces. And the reason I've done that is I'm going to make a sphere. Now, what I want to do is connect, I'm going to scale it up and connect this sphere to this object. But this has a lot more, clearly a lot more divisions. If we scale it up, that doesn't really match. I'll turn on the shaded wireframe and you can see it doesn't really match the number of divisions of that one. So what we want to do is match it. Remember, we made this as 20, so I'm going to come into the channel box, into my inputs, and here it says 32 by 32. So I'm going to select this one and then shift select that. So I've left clicked in the first one, shift left click in the second one, which gives me both of them. Type in 20 and hit enter, and so now both of them are 20 by 20. And so the reason I did that is I can go right mouse, holding down the right mouse, go into face mode. And what I want to do is select exactly the lower half. So if I hit 4, you can see I've almost selected the lower half. What you need to do if you want to quickly select a half like that, notice how I'm orbiting, so I'm very flat on. So what you don't want to do is, you know, I'm trying to select that lower half. You don't want to have this weird angle, like go to select, and I've got this you know, drag selection through here. I could just go to the front view and select it exactly like that. And so if I orbit around, I've got exactly the lower half selected. But it's pretty quick if you're used to it when you're in the perspective view, just to orbit so you're roughly or very close to flat. So if I go to wireframe, you can see it's pretty close to flat there, and that lets me quickly select that half without even changing views. So that sort of quick selection thing is useful, but you want to do a quick check as well. So you can see I'm orbiting around, just making sure I've only got that lower half selected. And I hit delete. So I only want to make that top half of the head, and that looks about right. Like I'm just checking that I've got a perfect selection there. It's exactly flat. You know, if I think it's flat, and let's say I've accidentally missed one for some reason, I hit delete and I look at it and there's a problem. You just check and go, oh, okay, well, if in this case I could just hit delete to get rid of that, or if it was the other way around, if it was like this, and I go delete, just check it, see that there's a problem, just go Control Z, and what I'm doing to deselect something is holding down Control. So when I hold Control, my cursor goes to a minus sign. So it means deselect. If I hold down Shift, it goes to a plus sign. What Shift actually does is inverse. So Shift, if something is like these faces here are not selected at the moment. So if I hold down Shift, it's going to go to a plus to add to the selection. Whereas if I hold down Shift and move it over something that's already selected, the cursor changes to a subtract from selection. So Shift is an inverse. Anyway, I've got exactly the lower half, so I'll hit delete. And what I want to do is, let's jump to the front view and hit W for the move and just position it, again, eyeballing it. What I need to do is line it up with this piece here. So I'm going to turn on my snap to point and just middle click, and you can see how that's snapping to each point. If we go in the 3D view, it's maybe a bit easier to see what it's doing. In the exact center there, it's snapping to whatever point. Maybe even wireframe might be easier to see. You can see it's snapping to each point on that object. What I really want to happen, I'm going to go to the top view. What I really want this to happen is to snap exactly in the middle of the object here. So come back to perspective, and you can see what that's done. It's positioned it, aligned it with that object. So now I'm jumping back to the front view. You can see how quickly it is to jump around, just holding down Shift and then clicking either perspective, left, top, front, whatever you need. You get really quick at jumping around, and I find that's a bit quicker than hitting Tab, picking which view, thinking about which view you want, and then hitting Tab again. That's kind of slow because you have to think for a moment, and you know it's just so much easier to just go straight to, you know, that up is perspective and down is front. You get used to that. So with this thing, I'm going to turn off snap to point, so I don't want it to snap anymore. So I've already positioned it. Hit R to scale, and let's just scale that in. So it's what I'm looking at is these verts here, these edges at the very bottom. As soon as they intersect, let's hit W and drag it up. So I'm just trying to, and I'm probably just going to approximate that just by eyeballing it. You know, it's just a little exercise, so we don't need to be perfect. On more serious projects, you want to try to be a bit more perfect, but when you're completely new, which is what this video is intended for, just getting the gist of it is fine. Don't want to stress too much, overthinking things. So what I want to do now is combine these two objects, this guy and this guy. If I come inside, notice these two objects, I don't have a face here. So remember I had a face all the way around like this. There was this face, and this is generally bad practice if you don't want faces on the inside of something. And so what I did was delete those faces. I just extruded that quickly to show you. But so when we come inside, we don't have a face. This one actually we don't need either, because you can see it's actually we do need that, because that is going to open and close later. Alright, so what I want to do is combine these two. So I'm just going to select the bottom one and then hold down Shift and select the top one. In my modeling toolkit, click combine. And so that makes them one piece, but the catch is it hasn't actually merged them. It's just combined the two objects. It was this object and this object, and it's combined them and created this new object that's where they're both together. But if I go into Vertex Mode, we've still got these vertices that are separated. So it's not like here, if I grab one of these verts from up here somewhere, you know, that's all connected and it works nicely, but down here it's a problem. So what I'm going to do is just drag select, just you can see I do that very roughly. All I care about is making sure I get this loop through the middle where I've got all of these verts that are overlapping. And there is a trick, we won't go into, don't need to worry about this at the moment, but if I select this, I should be seeing one vert. So basically when I select that vert there, this little display I've got open tells me right here I've got one vert. When I select this, and I can see just by looking at it there's two verts, but when I select it, it says 2. So that's a problem. The trick to see this if you want this open is display, head-up display, poly count. You should really have this open anytime you're modeling because it's useful to see if you've got multiple verts. But that's not really necessary to worry about. All you need to do is select all those verts, just making sure these are both selected. And I'm going to go into mesh, edit mesh, and then merge. And I probably don't even need the options, I'll just click merge. And what that's done is, actually I'll undo that and just show you. At the moment it's telling me I've currently got 133 vertices selected. If I go edit mesh merge, it's now telling me I've got 113 vertices selected. So it's clearly dropped in number. I don't care what that number is, but what I care about is that these verts, when I drag over it like that, it's only showing me one vert, whereas before it was showing me 2. That one there just showed me 2, but that's because inevitably I've selected behind it. So it looks like 1, but if I go to wireframe you can see I've selected that one. So what I've done is just merge those verts, so it's now nice and clean, it's one piece. Okay, so let's, looking at the front view, I've got the shape for the sort of dome at the top, but it's not looking right, is it? It's quite short, so it needs to be somewhere up here, and then there's a big long flat section. So what I'm going to do is simply grab Vertex Mode, drag all of these, so if I come back to perspective you can see what I've selected. I'm just going to drag them down. And we can stop. What I might actually do is snap. So if I go snap to vert, and I can just drag just on the up and down axes, the Y axes, I can snap that and it's going to snap perfectly with the one underneath. Remember to turn off your snap when you're finished. And let's save. I haven't saved in a while, so File, Save Scene As, and I like to click the last one and just drag over the number and increment it and go Save As. It's really useful to make these incremental saves. So that's looking roughly like this. Notice we've got this little discrepancy. There's this weird little color going through here. It's just because this edge that's currently selected has an issue with the normals. So all I'm going to do is go into edge mode and make sure that edge is selected. I could just do that. That's fine. And I want to go mesh display, soften edge. And what that's doing is just the way, it's a thing called normals, but it's a way that geometry is displayed to whether it looks soft or hard, and it's just a bit cleaner now. So that's basically the head part done. Let's do the eyes. Actually, I'll do the top piece. So that's just going to be, I'm just going to duplicate that cylinder, scale this down, and then scale it just in the Y so it goes up that way. And now at the top, let's see, why don't we, what I might do is go into face mode and just drag over those, hold down Control and drag over those, so that just quickly gives me that top selection. And if I hit R for scale and I hold down Shift to extrude, that's going to extrude straight out. Now I can, if I wanted to, I could drag it up, but what I'll do is hold down Shift and extrude again, going straight up. And so now that I've got this top cap here, so I'll stay in face mode, but what I want is just these faces. And so notice when I dragged over there, because of the angle I'm at, if I hit 4 to see my wireframe, so 4 is just a shortcut to turn my wireframe, so I can hit 5 or 4 to turn these buttons on. So 4, 5, I jump between those all the time, so it's easier just to hit 4 and 5. But you can see I've accidentally selected these, no big deal, just hold down Control, drag over it, deselect. I'm just going to make like the hole up there at the top, so let's scale it out a bit first because I'm looking at the thickness of this, and so we want that thickness there to be maybe about that sort of size. Hit W for my move tool, holding down Shift, and drag straight down. And that's probably about all we need to do. It could go down further, but you don't want to go, anytime you see black geometry, it means you've got inside out geometry, so it's a problem. So you want to avoid that. So don't pass through the bottom there. So that's probably fine. We've got faceting, so you can see all this edging. It looks really bad, so let's just, what I'll do this time, yeah, let's go to edge mode and just drag this way. So that's going to pass through and get all the ones on the outside and all the ones on the inside. And same thing as before, mesh display, soften edge, come back to object mode and deselect it, and that looks much better. And what I'll do now is turn on edit pivot, and I'm just going to manually drag this down a little bit, turn edit pivot off. I did that so I can angle it a bit, and let's get it a little bit imperfect, just a weird angle, and maybe off to the side a bit. Something like that. Okay, let's add some eyes. So this shape is, I could do it with a cylinder, but a pipe shape would be easier. So instead of using the shelf, which only has a selection of the polygons, if I come into create, polygons, we've got pipe down here. And so I'll just drag that up so you can see what that's done. It's made an object with a hole in it. I could make that from a cylinder, but this is just a lot quicker. So let's just quickly make this shape. If I hold down J when I rotate, it's snapping as it rotates, so it's just a nice way to quickly spin around at that angle. And kind of that sort of size. And what I'll do is Vertex Mode. So just hold down the right mouse and go to Vertex and drag over to grab all of those vertices. And I'm just going to scale them in a little bit just to get that general shape. What I could do is, because it looks like that's sort of indented a little bit, what I might do is hold down Control, so I just hit Q to get out of my scale tool. Good practice to hit Q every time you don't want to actually move, rotate or scale. What I'm going to do is just holding down Control, just deselecting all of those outside edges. So I've just got the inside selected, and I'm just going to move that in backwards a little bit. And it might look better actually if it's not completely flat in. So I want an edge loop in the middle here. So what I'm going to do is hit multi-cut tool, and in here, if I hold down Control, and all I'm doing is holding down Control and moving the cursor, and it shows me a preview of the new edge loop it's going to create. I want one roughly in the middle. I don't care exactly where, about the middle. I'm just going to left click once, and it just puts in that new edge loop. I can turn that off. So now if I come into edge mode and double click that edge, it selects that whole loop, and that'll let me just make slight changes. Maybe I'll scale it out a little, just so it's not completely a flat plane, it sort of eases into it. Okay, now so far everything we've been making is I haven't been smoothing anything, but I will start doing that. It will look a lot better if you smooth things. So I'm going to go into edge mode. There's a key, if I stay in object mode, if I hit 3 on the keyboard, it gives me what's called a smooth preview. So it's a preview of what will happen when I smooth it properly. So this button will smooth it for real. I don't want to do that yet because that's ugly. That's not what I want. What I want are these hard edges, these edges on the outside, to remain hard edges. So I'm going to double click that one, hold down Shift and double click that inside one, and Shift double click this one, and Shift double click this one. So I've got, if I hit wireframe, maybe it's easier to see, I've just got those 4 inside and outside edges selected. So now that they're selected, I can click Bevel. And so Bevel just turns those edges into double edges, or I could increase that if I want like 3, but I'll probably just leave it at 1 is fine. And I'm going to hold down Control and change the fraction. So if I just click and drag the fraction, it's really quick and hard to use. If I hold Control, it's nice and slow and smooth. And what I like to do is approximate something like that and just hit 3 on the keyboard to smooth preview. to get an idea of what it's going to look like, and that's quite nice. That's basically what I wanted. And let's just increase the segments to 2 and take a look at the difference. So you can see there, by having that extra segment, it's a bit sharper, and I kind of like that, so I'm going to leave it. So I'll hit 1 to get out of my smooth preview. You don't want to work in smooth preview, you just want to take a quick look, and then when you're done, just hit 1 to go back to the normal version. Otherwise you get confused. So that's the shape I want. So I'm just going to click smooth. I have this option to increase the number of divisions. You generally want to keep it as low as you can get away with. The more you increase it, the higher the poly count gets, and the slower Maya can run, and it's just unnecessary. You don't want to add more detail than you need, and that looks just fine like that. So now we've got this object, I'll position it where I want it. Let's just go to the front view and move this over. So it's probably going to be about here. And I'm going to Control D and duplicate one over there. And let's bring them back a little bit. And what I want to do now is, actually they're probably a little bit wider. I want to make it a bit derpy. So I'm just going to randomly rotate at just a strange angle. And I might even though it's not in the reference, I might make one slightly bigger. I just always like the look of these dorky kind of things when the one eye's bigger than the other. It's just my choice. I'm just thinking that's a bit small, so I'll scale it like that. And now that I've done all this, what I want to do is rotate it back to form the head. Actually, let's just stick some bolts in first. So I've got little bumps there for the spheres. That'll be really easy if I just make a sphere. So for the bolts, little bolts in there. If I just make a sphere, it's probably a bit high poly, but who cares? That'll work. And what I'll do, firstly scale it, but I'm also going to scale it. So in the middle scale, it's uniform scale. I want to also do in this direction to make it more of a button kind of shape. And let's go to the front view and just position it. Let's see, it starts right in the middle of the eyes. I just want to make sure that it's kind of intersecting like that. I'm just going to do that. Alright, so it's roughly in the middle and it's a little bit off center, it's kind of nice. I'll Control D to duplicate and drag that one up, and Control D to duplicate. So I've got the vertical position about where I want. Actually realised they're way too big. Let's just scale these down a bit. Probably better. So Control D, and let's see, about there. Control D, about there. That's probably all I need. And now let's, obviously if I come back into the side view, or not the side, but I'm just orbiting in the perspective to roughly the side is all I need. And I'm going to rotate that so it's approximately in there like that, intersecting. So nothing too difficult. It gives us a bit of detail. And now what I want to do is rotate this whole head back to form this shape. But for that to work, obviously I can't just rotate like this because all these bits get missed, get lost. What I need to do is combine it all. So holding down Shift and just adding to my selection, I'm selecting each piece and going combine. Then I hit W for my move tool, and I want to just move that pivot point. So edit pivot point, snap to point, and I'm just going to snap it to this point. If I hold down the middle mouse and just move the mouse, it snaps to that point. I can turn off edit pivots and turn off snap. And so now we've got the ability to rotate the whole thing. You could animate that and have him talking. It's kind of cool. Let's also get a little bit of angle in there. And this one I might angle it a touch that way. Maybe a touch down. Just trying to keep things a little bit interesting, not too flat and boring. Everything should be kind of dynamic and mixed up. Alright, so let's I might see we've got how nice this looks compared to this, so let's just smooth out these edges, which is going to be easy if I double click that edge. That's pretty much the only edge on this one I want to smooth, so I'll just bevel it. I'll keep that bevel small, not that small, and I might go 2 segments so you can see what it's doing. If I tap 3 smooth preview, what it's doing is giving it that nice sharp look, and so that looks nice. So now here's the problem: if I smooth preview this, it's smoothing the thing that's already smooth, these pieces. If I've already combined something and I realize I need to separate them, there's a button for that next to combine, separate, not a problem. So I'm going to smooth this piece that I've beveled, so smooth, and that's all I need. And you can see straight away how much better this edge looks compared to this edge. So we'll do the same in a minute down to there, but I also want to smooth this thing. So I go to edge mode, I need to select all of the sharp corners. So make sure I go inside there, hold down shift, double click. All I'm doing is double clicking to select the loop. Shift, double click, and I'm just going to hit 4 for wireframe and shift double click right down there as well. Now bevel, I'll do 2 segments again. I'll hit 5 to get back to my shaded mode, and just holding down control and clicking and dragging on the fraction to get it about there somewhere. And I can hit 3 if I want to take a look, but I'm sure that's fine. And I'll just click smooth. So that looks much better. So now that I've done all that, let's just combine that back together. So just select all of those pieces, combine. And we've got one piece there that I could select and move if I wanted. I'll just hit Control S to save. Let's bevel this thing to smooth it. Very easy, double click that one, shift double click that one, bevel. I want 2 segments, I want a smaller fraction, and I'll go back to objects mode and click smooth. And that's that done. I'm not going to worry about the top because we don't really see it. Actually, if I smooth it, notice the top is a problem. If I hit 3, when I smooth it, because the top isn't beveled, it'll collapse in. So what I'll do is I'll just hit 4 in wireframe and go into edge mode. I'm just going to double click that and shift double click that one. So I've got the top and the bottom, bevel. Same thing, 2. Number of segment, turn that fraction down a little bit. I'm just hitting 5 to get back to shaded mode. Hold down right mouse objects mode and click smooth. So always smooth when you're in object mode. And so that's a really nice start. So let's just, we could speed this up a little bit we can cheat some of the pieces. So I guess the main thing there would be that we can use the eyes for the hands. So what I'll do is, I might just make a sphere. I think will be fine for those shoulders, because we're just being simple about this. So I'll just do one shoulder and then duplicate the whole thing over. So scale it down, put it in like that, and it's a little bit, so I've rotated it and then I want to scale it just to get a little bit of sense of it's a shoulder, something like that. I'm not too worried, that'll do. Let's add a cylinder. This is quite thin and long, and we'll just stick this one thinner. There we go. What I could do is click Edit Pivot, or just hit D, which is quicker, and then just drag that up. And I'm not even worried about perfection with snapping that there. I'm just going to drag it up so that I can hit E to scale, and I can rotate around that point. It just makes it a bit easier to position. And I'm going to just steal this piece. So let's separate that again. I don't really need to combine it at this point anyway. I'll Control D to duplicate this, and we'll what I want is the pivot point to be exactly centered. I can just click Edit Pivot and just click on it and it's going to align. what I can also do is this little icon in the poly modeling shelf centers the pivot into the exact center of that object. And so we'll just scale it in. And quick way to snap it here is snap to point. Shortcut for this is holding down V, but clicking that works. And turning that off. So looking at that reference, it's thinner and then thicker, so it's upside down. So let's just spin it around. And I like that it's kind of, it's not aligned with that cylinder. It looks a bit more interesting that it bends a little bit. Let's just scale it so it's slightly, the hole around that is just a little bit thicker. Like there's a little bit of a gap between the arm and where the hand goes. And you can see that that's rounded, so let's use this smooth edge to our advantage. If I double click this edge, just slightly scale it out. And I'll double click that one and scale it out a tiny bit, and same with this. And so that just gives us that sort of very slightly sense of it being curved. For the hands, let's just do a cube. So I click a cube and we can see, now this cube, see how my pivot point's all messed up? If I double click the move tool, that opens up my tool settings and it's set to a weird custom one. I can just go reset tool, but I can also click on the axis orientation and change that. So world will reset that to like up and down and a bit more, it makes a bit more sense. Now I don't want all of these divisions, so let's just come back to the channel box, inputs, and change. I'm going to select the first one and then shift select the third one and type in 1, and so it just gets rid of all of those divisions. I'm going to make a really basic kind of finger shape here, so I just want that kind of thing. I could curve it a bit if I wanted, so I could do something like multi-cut tool, do an insert, so holding down control and just clicking, and then I could basically grab, let's do it by the vertices, so I just grab those verts and I could just move it out a little bit. So it creates a slight bend. That's probably all we need. And it might also look good if we just grab these two verts, which is the same as going into edge mode and selecting that edge, just a quicker way when you're already in vert mode. I might just do that to make it look a little bit more like a finger. Scale it down, position it, and let's, I'm just going to hold down V, which is the shortcut to turning that on. So when I hold down V, I can snap this to this vert and just quickly do something like that, just roughly position that in. And let's make it a bit thinner, just so probably a bit long actually, something like that. I'm going to Control D to duplicate, and on this side I'm just going to hit R for scale, and in this direction I'm just going to negatively scale, and so that basically mirrors it. It's a kind of rough way to mirror the object, and so that gives us the fingers. That'll be good enough, I guess. What I'll do is shift select all three and combine. I'm just thinking I might just rotate that a little bit just so the finger's a bit more obvious. I'm just going to quickly do that. And now let's shift select all, the entire arm, combine. Control D to duplicate, move it over here. I'm hitting R and I'm just going to scale it in the negative, which just mirrors it basically. And we'll just position that inside, and maybe let's just orbit it, just rotate it randomly, just so it's a little bit different they're not perfectly identical. And all that's left to do is the legs, which are really simple, they're just cylinders. Just basically make a very long, thin cylinder. I might jump to the front view to get a sense of scale, so it's roughly that size, something like that. A bit short. I don't want to rotate, I want to move it up. And I'll do one side first, and what I'll do is just extrude out this foot. So I'll just go into face mode. If I just roughly drag over there and then hold down Control and drag over the top, that just gives me, quickly gives me that bottom selection. Holding down Shift and dragging, that extrudes that out. And hitting R for my scale tool, scale that out to create this base of the foot, and then hit W, holding down Shift, drag it down. And that's the foot, but anytime you make new geometry by extruding, which is what I've done there, it sets it as a hard edge. So if I just select this object, what I'm going to do is select those edges, so edge mode, and just drag over those edges. So I don't want to select this base edge at all. So you just want to make sure you only get these edges. So mesh display, soften, and you can see now that looks a lot better. Hasn't got those hard edges. Let's smooth this. So I'm just going to double click that one. I really want these, so I'm holding down Shift, double clicking. I want these edge loops to also be smooth, and the top. So wireframe. So hit forward for wireframe. Shift, double click that loop. Gives me all of those loops, and we will bevel. And same as before, let's go with 2 and make that section fraction relatively small. And that's probably, if I just tap 3, you can see what's going to look like roughly when I smooth it. So let's smooth it in object mode. And we're basically done. So Control D, bring this foot over, and we'll just orbit because it's a little bit off center. Maybe something like that. Turn off that grid. I could do a little bit of detailing there real quick. So I could just grab this sphere. The pivot point's out of whack, so let's just center the pivot. I'll just hit Control S, I haven't saved in a while. I'll Control D to duplicate that. Let's jump to the front view. This is, let's see, it's got one just about here. Perspective, hit F. F will focus in on that object real quick. I'm just going to position it about there. Jump back to front view, and let's Control D. I've got one about here and one about here. I'm going to Shift select both of those and just drag them both back, and I'll just do it one by one. I'll grab this one and just rotate rather. And same with this guy, so select that and just rotate it. I just want to make sure that is intersecting. And let's just combine those so they're the one piece. Combine. Control D to duplicate, so we've got the ones at the bottom. And just quickly, I would like to get some detail for that horizontal stuff, so I'll just grab this edge. I've got this edge loop in here. What I'll do actually is multi-cut, and just holding down Control, I'll just add. So that gives me that middle one, and I want one for above and below. In edge mode, I'm just going to shift. Actually, what I'll do is go into face mode. Let's see. I'll grab this top loop here. I want to grab this one and then Shift double click the one next to it. Selects that entire loop all the way around. And now to extrude this, I'm going to click extrude instead of doing the Shift trick. I want to use the tool because when I hit extrude, it lets me click on thickness and just comes straight out. That's kind of what I want, and I'm doing the same here. Shift, double click that, click extrude, holding down Control and dragging on the word thickness, and it just creates a little bit of extra detail there. And let's smooth it. So I want to make sure, so holding down Shift, I'll make sure it smooths each of these edge loops. Shift double click. The rest of it's already been smooth, but I'm just going to do an extra smooth. We can handle the poly count increase, it's fine. Let's do 2 segments. Zoom in a bit. Three segments. I don't want that, I want 2. There we go. Probably overkill. I probably don't need 3 segments. But if I hit 3 and go into object mode, you can see it's looking pretty nice. So I'll hit 1 to turn off smooth preview, and we'll smooth it. in object mode. So that looks good. Finally, let's call him done in terms of modeling, but I'll just put a metallic material on it and do a quick render. So let's just, I don't need this reference image anymore, so delete. Let's incrementally save this. So save as 03. Cool, so let's add a plane. Scale it right up. Stick it just down here so it's just under his feet. And I'll just grab these, so I'll go on edge mode, grab these two edges, hold down shift and drag it up. And I'll also go into edge mode and drag these three edges and click bevel. I'll leave that fraction as it is and just increase the segments a lot. So that just gives me a nice backdrop real quick. I'll add a camera, create camera. Now I'll go panels look through selected. So the camera is currently selected because I just made a camera and the latest thing you made is selected. So panels look through selected. So I'm now looking through the camera. Just zoom out a bit and position it the way I want. It's going to be about that, but we can't really tell what it looks like until we turn on our resolution. So I'll hit render settings, this button. And now I'm going to, let's render it in Arnold. Just so everyone can render this with the default, the free renderer that comes with Maya. So Arnold renderer, and I'll go HD 540 is probably a reasonable preset. It might take like a minute, but it's not a big deal. And we will turn on the resolution gate. So this button here shows me that framing. Looking at this, there's a lot of empty space that I really don't need, so I'm going to customize this resolution. So back to my render settings. Let's just say, so 540 high is probably fine, but maybe, I don't know, I'm just going to guess a number. I don't care really about, you know, it's not like I'm outputting this as a video for, that needs to be a certain aspect ratio. So that sort of framing works well. Okay, so we'll close that and I'll get out of the camera. Now this guy, what I'm going to do is just put the one material on the whole thing, just keep it simple. So I'll drag over the whole lot, but that's also selecting this background. So hold down Control and click on that to deselect it. And I might just combine this. So click Combine, and now it's just one piece. And you know, it is good practice to rename things. Multiple ways you could do that, so we just rename it and call it bot or something. What I'm going to do is hold down the right mouse and go New Material, and this time we're using Arnold, and the standard shader that you use for Arnold is called the Arnold Standard Surface, so it's this one with a weird different icon to the rest of them. So I click on that one, Standard Surface. Okay, so if I come into the channel box, you notice there's all of this history built up. There's all of these nodes from everything I've done. You can see the bevels and the smooths and everything I've done. This can really slow down Maya. It's pretty rare that you need to come into it. Once you delete, you can delete this, and you need to delete it regularly. So if you just go into Edit, delete all by type history, and all of that history is gone. And notice we don't have all of this rubbish in the outliner anymore. It's cleaned up. So if I come into the attribute editor, okay, so with this standard shader, what I can do is click presets, and it gives us a selection of preset settings that can be quite useful and look interesting. So let's go with like a brushed metal kind of look, and I'll just click on replace. And we won't see it in the viewport, and we currently can't render because we don't have any lights in our scene. So let's just quickly add some lights. So Arnold lights, I'm going to add an area light, and I'll just scale it right up so it's quite large, and I'll rotate it. So it's got this little line sticking out of it. That's the direction it's pointing. So I'll hit J, hold down J and snap it, or rotate it. So when I rotate holding down J, it snaps, it rotates in increments. So I'll bring this up here, and I have a feeling from memory, the intensity of this needs to be, because I've scaled everything up so much, the intensity is going to need to be a lot higher. So I'm going to actually set it to 1000 to do a quick test. Let's just take a look. So I'll click on this, just hit save, Control S. Get in the habit of always saving right before you render, because it seems to be one of the most common times for a crash to happen. So I'll click on the render view, and I'm just going to right click this and say camera 1 to tell it to render through the camera. So it's rendering. The strength is not too bad, but it's a little bit on the dark side. The dark side. Let's increase this to 5000. Try again. Okay, it's getting a bit better, and that's probably good enough for just general amount of light. And now I want some extra light. So I don't need to finesse too much at this point. Let's just get my initial light happening. Now I'll come into Arnold. Actually, what I'll do is come into Create, Lights, and I'll use a spotlight. So this is a Maya spotlight that will render through Arnold. I'm going to click on Look Through Selected and just zoom out a bit. And I'll just put this here. And let's increase the cone angle. The penumbra angle, that's basically the edge between the shadow and the light, and then drop off sort of how much it falls off. So you can see the shape of that, and intensity, I'm really just guessing, but I'm going to try 500, and then Control D to duplicate that light. Panel, Look Through Selected, and we'll turn around from this angle. So we've got two lights at two different angles, and maybe go a bit lower. And we'll turn this down a bit, so let's try 300. Not sure if this will work, because I haven't rendered, so you hit render and take a look and see how it goes, and then start tweaking your settings. And it's not too bad, so it's kind of working. Of course, it's not looking like the original so much, because it's not unwrapped and textured. If you really want it to look good, there's a lot more you could do to it. You could take it, firstly you could take it into like a sculpting program and beat it up a little bit to get some dents and things. But also what you could do is do what's called unwrapping. So basically turn the 3D model into a 2D image that lets you paint a texture onto it, and then you could use a texturing program. You could just use Photoshop, or most people these days use Substance Painter, which is basically Photoshop for 3D. And then you can texture and get all the fine little details. But you know, just as a quick little beginner exercise, this takes us through pretty much all the fundamental skills you need to be able to just make some interesting stuff inside of Maya, you know, without really needing to master the more complex tools. This would allow you use the exact same tools that we just covered, but would allow you to make pretty much anything you can imagine, just maybe not to the level of detail that or efficiency that you would be able to do once you start to use some of the more advanced features. So yeah, hopefully that's been helpful. You know, it's very much a sort of intro to Maya session for complete beginners. But it's nice to be able, when you're first new to an art program, to be able to make some art. So I hope that's not too stressful, and I didn't skip over anything or rush through it too much. So good luck and happy modeling. Cheers.